Hello, this is CS480, Happy Loner project. This is the IP address and the username as requested, and now we're going to start the project, and we're going to restart the API as requested, I believe, in the documentation, and then show the different tables here, and talk about our outline and ERD to begin with. So we've showed the information that was required right here. And now we're going to start talking about the outline and ERD. So the outline wasn't really followed that greatly. The match ID, I had an obscured thought process about how I'm going to keep track of how many items each player has, and then Professor Diaz Dana helped me and sorted it out and told me I needed a player item relation table, and that's what this is. And I learned a lot about how to operate with that table and how to work with it, work inside of it and whatnot. The code's still compiling, but as soon as it does, we'll go ahead and show the different calls and whatnot. I guess we can get started with the next steps and stuff. So we don't have any initialized database function implemented yet. I do have a crude entity though. That's my player table. So we're going to take a look at that, and I have an insert and a delete. And in the API, the insert and delete can be shown while the thing's still loading. The insert is the save function. It gets called inside the code right here, and you can see it being called right here. That's the same link, and because it's a post mapping, it's able to differentiate between this player data save right here and this get mapping player data right here. And so because it's post mapping, it goes to this one and it saves it. And so that's what we're going to demonstrate in a second here. And then we also have delete. Delete is another one, and this grabs, same thing as insert, it grabs some information from the screen, which is some text boxes here, get text, and gets password and username. But instead of sending a JSON over and then having a predefined function receive that JSON string and basically insert it, as long as it matches up with everything down here, because it's pretty much the only times I got errors was if it was missing one of these that weren't auto-increment or defaulted to something. Then it won't throw any errors and it'll use this. But if it doesn't match that, then it won't. So because I packed this up in a JSON string in a struct, and use this and then sent it over that way, that's why I'm able to use this predefined function right here. But in this delete, you see that I'm sending it through as parameters in the URL. So it's a bit different, and none of this actually works right here. I should have deleted it. It's redundant. It's because I copied and pasted it down and then changed this up a little bit. But the main request is this these two parameters being sent in. That's what is being received and modified, and we can see that right when we go down here to delete player is what's eventually called, but it's first, before we do that, when we actually call the API and interact with it, we're interacting with this right here, and then this calls this, which is this, and then this calls this, which is a SQL procedural call, which is exactly this. So that's how the delete player function works. And now it is still compiling, which is ridiculous, but that's how Unreal Engine is. So I went over how we insert into the player table and how we delete from the player table. And then when I start it up, I'll show you it working, and then we'll move on to the second entity for time sakes and whatnot. But I believe it was requested that we start it all in this video and show compiling, so that's what this is. That's what this is. Yes. Oh god. It's got more loading to do. There we go. Alright, now. Thank god. That was a lot of waiting for nothing. So now let's quickly test what I just showed you. The insert and delete into the player table. So let's go look at the player table. Let's bring it up. Probably going to want it up. Now we're going to insert just the default one. No, we're not, because it's already inserted. We'll delete it. Delete the default one. So you can see it got deleted. We're going to insert our own though. We're going to insert SFD, SFD, and SFD, and then insert, and you can see SFD, SFD, FSD, and now we'll SFD, SDF, or it's actually SDF, and we'll delete it, and you can see that it's not deleting because my password is not correct. I have to match the exact password that I want to delete. which is pass 3 S's with df. And now that I've correctly gotten the password, oh, it's because I'm also doing a wrong username. But see, now it will delete if it's all correct information. So let's just do that one more time with a GFG, and then we'll do G and F, and we'll insert it, and GF, and then delete it, and it deletes. See that? Now, create entity number 2. Let's go ahead and go to that. It is implemented. It is the player table, so, or the player item amount table. So that would be this table right here. So now we're going to look at update and insert. So those are 2 stored procedural calls, but a lot happens when we actually call this and do this. So let's just walk through it one at a time. So when we update, we first have to have a player in the database to update. So we'll just insert our GFG again and make sure that player did get back in, and he did, GGF. And now we'll go into player amount, and we'll make sure that we're updating G, because that's our player that we want to update, right? And we're going to just hit update, because what this is going to do is it's going to insert him into the table for every combination of items that that player could have. So ready, let's do it. And there it is. So 91 is the ID of this player. And now in the player item amount table, we see that it is in there 3 times, and that is because it went to the items table and it read all the item variables that we have in the code, and it sent out an actual insert for each one of these items based on how many items we had in our inventory, which is 0 for each one. So let's walk through it real quick in code, because there's going to be an update that we're going to do in a bit here, in addition to the insert that we just did. So when we call it's a BF, because BF is all my button clicks. Button function, blueprint function is what I pretty much refer to them as. So this one right here is where it starts. So this is what the button click does. We start compiling down from here after we click the button. So as soon as we click the button, we get a log output telling us some stuff, and we get the stuff it's telling us is what was in that text box. That was just for a test for when it was first being developed. And now we go down and we see this call. Now this is literally just lookup player. This is lookup player into player table. It's right here, and it's being called right here in the API. Username pro, and it's being called by this mapping right here. Yep. So get data tester, so get player. Now we have this function binded to this that will get executed after this request is finished. And when we go to this function that is binded to that request when it's finished, we see that it has access to the previous request that it was binded to. So now we can tell if that player table came back with a player or it didn't. And this is the case that it didn't. It has an internal server error. There is no player in the player table with that name, or it did. And so now we need to go and we need to insert, or we need to actually just check right now is what we're doing. This is still a check. We're going to check the player item amount table for each of these items with this username. So that's going to be 3 total times we're going to send this out and check. And now we have another function binded to this, and we can go and do the exact same thing that we just did of seeing what this what the response will be. So this is one of the 3 previous requests will have been this request, so we have to see which one. So that's why we go and see if it's a beaked visor, a spike shield, or an iron mace request. And if it is, that's the item name. And each one of these can only be for one item. And then therefore, we're going to, based on whether or not it was in there or not, now we can either, if it's not in the player item amount table, we can insert it into the player amount table, which I said add, but insert. And if it is in the player item amount table, then we update the player item amount table. Now we did this line. We went here, we went to add. And so we can go ahead and look at all these procedural calls that are being called. So the first one for the update, we can go back to what's this is binded to. So right here, on lookup update. So right here it says check for lookup update. This is the one that we're calling, and go back to here on check for update, and this is the actual call that's being called from right here, player data lookup updates. So this is what the mapping is. This is the URL that's being called, and then this calls this, which calls this way up here, and this is the actual SQL call, the procedural call of this what I have up here. Now if we did that, we go into the next function like I said, so that's this one right here, and we're going to either insert or update. And so based on those two calls, we can see that it either updates or inserts. And where these are, actually this is the interface, it's down here where it is called from the Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine calls these three, and these three call one of these depending on which ones they are, because this is the interface for the player item mount table. And then that's how we either update a player or add a player, and these are both calling the their procedural calls that would match them. So then we can see right here in update player in the relations table, this is a player an update right there for the player of that ID. It's getting the numbers, the internal IDs, server IDs of what they were. Like I'm talking these IDs. That's what that first query is doing. It's getting the ID right here. Out of this we get the ID, and then we get an item ID. That's how we're inserting it, and then we insert the amount as well. That's down here, amount of, and that's one of the parameters. That's way over right there. So that's how all this works, and now let me show it in action. So we inserted one into this table. We see that it's G. Now we're gonna update it. We went through the insert, now we're going to do the update. Now we have a shield, we have a mace, we have 3 helmets. Everything should change. There shouldn't be any of them left one. And now let's make sure we got it real different. Let's grab one more shield so we just differentiate all of them. There we go, it works definitely. Now let's go check what these are. So these items are 1, 2, 3, so visor, it's a helmet, shield 2, and mace 3. So let's check 3, we have 1 mace, 2, we have 2 shields, and 3, we have, or 1, we have 3 helmets. That's correct. Now, if we wanted to delete this, we would be able to delete it by deleting from the player table. Once we do that, it will disappear from this table and be gone. So, there you go. It's GFG is gone from the player table because we deleted it from the player table. Same delete we pressed earlier, but because it's cascade delete to this player item amount table, it's gone. It does not reference deleted objects. It'll also delete any items that I remove, but I don't have any buttons to do that. I would have to do it manually. It's cascade delete with them. So that's pretty much it for the update. The update's pretty crazy. I would count that as a complex query in itself, but you know, what are we gonna do? Create entity 3. I didn't really interact with the item table that much. You see it right here. I have 3 entities: player, item, and player amount. But the item table, unfortunately, kind of just read from it. Didn't ever insert or delete from it. 3 simple queries for sure. That's going to be our lookup, which we used earlier to check if the player is even a player in the database. Which now I'm able to just look up the player, which this player doesn't exist, so we got a failure when we looked him up. But if we look up a player that does exist, we go to the player thing, we could just go DFG is a player that exists, look up player, and we see DFG is looked up. And the way this all works is this lookup player just goes and first it starts with us pressing that button, which is right up here, BF play lookup player, there we go, and then we go to here, and because it's a get, not a post, now it's different than the other one too, in terms of the fact that, or no, this isn't, sorry, I'll take that back, but it is a get, not a post, but I mean to tell you that for something else, but this one does get asked also as for the update, but the reason it doesn't do what it did on the update here is because the function it's binded to is different. So the function it's binded to just outputs it to the log, and where it is, right here, and then just that's what we have in the bottom of our log here. This response, player 53, username, that's all from this right here, which is called after this is completed. So that's how that works, and that calls this, which calls, it actually calls this first before it calls anything else. It calls this, and then it calls this right here. That's the order of things. Now I also have two other simple queries, load player item table and load player table. Both these work very crude, and that's exactly what they're meant for. It's just meant for me to check my stuff when I was trying to get this all working. Really difficult. I know I could have probably just looked at the player table like this, but I wanted to make sure that it was all updating all at the same time, so I added these to make sure I could do that, and checks out that it was all connected perfectly. So those two queries though are calling the API. There are two button clicks, very low in the BF functions, right? It should be BF player table, item table right here, and so these just call these two API functions, which find all, and so they're like the save function that I showed in the beginning. They're kind of built in, and so these find all functions just do a select data type name, and then select star from item. And it just knows that because I guess it has the item name already, because these have to be the same names of the tables that I'm accessing. Otherwise it won't work. And so I guess that because it has that, it's able to just have these functions like this. So that is how this is all working. Thank you for everything this semester. We got no complex queries really, if I'm being honest. The update's complex query, I'd say, but conclusion, I hope this works out. I hope I get a good grade for this. It was really hard. I couldn't actually use any of the C++ connectors because this uses the Unreal Build tool, so that's all out of the question. There's no such thing as a C++ connector for this. These won't work. They'll compile for a little bit and they'll let you do some stuff, but eventually it'll tell you you're missing a DLL file or something. And now I made everything go away, so time to stop and call it good. Thank you guys for a great semester. See y'all later.